Julius Caesar was one of the most influential individuals in the history of Rome. A remarkable military leader and innovative politician, he played a crucial role in the transformation of the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire. His politics had a strong populist flavor, making him a favorite with the common citizens of Rome. His conquest of Gaul extended the Roman world to the North Sea, leading up to the first Roman invasion of Britain. But his military and political successes came at a price. Many Roman senators feared his intentions were to replace the Republic with a kingship. When Julius Caesar broke the law by bringing his army across the Rubicon River into Rome proper in 49 BC, civil war broke out, from which he emerged as the unrivaled leader of the Roman world. With control of the government, Caesar implemented extensive social and political reforms intended to improve the efficiency of the government in Rome and the conquered lands. Seeing the need to reform the calendar, which had become months out of sync with the seasons, Caesar adopted a new Julian calendar. This reform resulted in increased agricultural productivity and wealth for a greater number of people, not just the traditional Roman aristocracy. For his efforts, the month of July became his namesake. Further reforms allowed foreigners to become Roman citizens. On the downside, these reforms tended to irritate the aristocratic establishment, who saw their power and wealth diminished. When he declared himself dictator in perpetuity, a group of senators, led by Marcus Brutus, assassinated Caesar on the Ides of March, 44 BC, hoping to restore the Republic. However, another Roman civil war ensued, resulting in a permanent autocracy, with the subsequent emperors incorporating the title of Caesar into their full names as a sign of authority and lineage back to Julius Caesar. When the name Caesar is used by itself, it refers to Julius Caesar. Curiously, Edgar Cayce almost gave a reading on Caesar. On July 17, 1925, a reading was given for a 26-year-old actress born on July 21, 1899. Cayce was in Dayton, Ohio, when he gave the reading. As was typical for life readings, Cayce began by counting backwards in time to the birth date of the individual. Then he would start with the most recent past life and go on backward in time, recounting only those past lives that were most relevant to the present life. In this case, something remarkable happened as he went back over the dates. When he reached 1906, he commented, "July 21st, 1906, Caesar was born into the world again on this date." His wife Gertrude Cayce was conducting the reading. She asked where was Caesar born. Cayce replied, "Bellefontaine, Ohio." Sadly, Mrs. Cayce did not follow up with questions about Caesar for fear of becoming sidetracked with the intended reading. Cayce continued counting back to the birth date of the actress and proceeded with the life reading in the usual manner. Although her soul entity had a fascinating record with incarnations in France during the reign of Louis XV, in ancient Greece, Atlantis, and even in the southwest region of North America, there were no obvious connections with Caesar or that Roman period of history. One possible connection is geographical. Bellefontaine is located just 60 miles northeast of Dayton, Ohio, where Cayce gave the reading. Further research into the readings uncovers another curious reference to Bellefontaine in a reading given in 1944 for a 53-year-old housewife. In the first sentence of that reading, Cayce observed that some very interesting characters have been born near Bellefontaine. In the 1944 reading, the woman had a past life as a companion of the Roman Emperor Nero, a fascinating tale that we will pursue in a later section. One can only wonder at Cayce's psychic process in such cases. Apparently, when he is given the suggestion to focus on a particular individual's past lives, he retains the capacity to take in a broader perspective of the interrelationships and soul patterns. Perhaps Bellefontaine had some attractions for reincarnating souls who had been together in ancient Rome. Perhaps the sole entity that was Julius Caesar was part of the soul group of Edgar Cayce, hence a connection and familiarity that allowed the seepage of that soul history information into the other reading. Perhaps the importance of Julius Caesar in the history of Western civilization was a factor in the curious remarks made during the introduction of the reading. Or perhaps the past lives of the particular individuals themselves were somehow connected or intertwined in ways not specified in the readings. From an historical standpoint, we can only wish that a follow-up reading to elucidate Caesar's 20th century incarnation had been given to provide some details and explain why Cayce provided that incidental information in the first place. At least we do have several other readings that can provide some fascinating information about some of the individuals close to the historical Caesar that shed some light on this giant of Roman history. For instance, a reading given in 1944 for a 40-year-old osteopathic physician discussed a past life as a guard to Julius Caesar. The man was informed that he had carried over doubts and fears from that existence. Cayce counseled him to focus on the spiritual application of love to resolve the lingering effects of his association with Julius Caesar. On a more favorable note, a reading given in 1939 for a 26-year-old physicist cited a past life at the time when Julius Caesar was introducing some of his widespread social and political reforms. The reading noted that although there is a tendency for historians to focus on the drama of war and conquest, we should not overlook the basic activities that form the foundation of human experience. Thus, during Caesar's reign, there was not only the expansion of Roman influence by military conquest, but also an improvement in the productivity and constructive activities in the conquered lands. As a counselor in the name of Antonin, this individual assisted the peoples of what is now called Spain, Greece, Northern Africa, and portions of Asia to analyze their lands for optimal agricultural productivity. As a carryover into his present lifetime, he was interested in the practical application of natural forces to assist his fellow citizens to meet their needs and have a high quality of life. The dark side of Caesar's influence was illustrated in a reading provided in 1944 for a naval inspector. This man was cautioned that unless he became less engrossed in himself and more thoughtful of others, he would be murdered again by his same partner, a replay of his Roman incarnation. His reading acknowledged his considerable abilities and noted that he had the potential to accomplish as much as Julius Caesar. But Cayce went on to counsel that he not make a fool of himself as Caesar had done and get himself killed. In that Roman incarnation, the man was known as Aquilon, a servant and admirer of Caesar. He catered to the whims of those in authority, to his own demise. His 20th century life afforded the opportunity to make amends if he was willing to change how he viewed himself and treated others, or he would have to meet his own Brutus. Cayce's reference to Brutus is significant, since he had given a reading in 1939 for a 1-month-old baby boy who was said to have been Brutus in a past life. From a historical standpoint, Marcus Brutus was an influential politician of the late Roman Republic. True to his aristocratic birth, he made his fortune by lending money at high rates of interest during his governorship of Cyprus. He returned to Rome a rich man. Brutus is best known for his pivotal role in the assassination of Julius Caesar in an attempt to take control of the Republic. Ironically, Brutus was a highly favored nephew of Caesar, who owed much to his uncle's kindness and generosity in overlooking some of the young man's previous failures and disloyalties. When Octavian succeeded Caesar, he had the assassins declared criminals. Brutus eventually lost his battle against Octavian and committed suicide. Considering the choices made by Brutus, questions of motivation and character certainly arise. Was his decision to become one of the assassins motivated by a well-intentioned desire for the return of the Republic, or by his own political ambition? Was he a man of high character who paid the ultimate price for his convictions, or was he merely an opportunist who made a dreadful miscalculation? The reading given for the baby boy who had been Brutus may shed some light on these questions. The reading began with the warning about the character of the child that must be dealt with, especially during the first 12-year formative period of development. Casey observed that the child would have a strong materialistic tendency and be attracted to those in power. He would be strong in body and mind with a willful determination to have his own way, as was the pattern in his association with Julius Caesar. He would tend to be carefree, resenting any form of guidance. Hence, discipline was essential, but it must be administered with love and patience, and the guidance and discipline must be backed up by an example in the lives of the parents. The reading noted that there would be a tendency toward hero worship during the early years, and even recommended that early training in the routine as a soldier could be helpful. Otherwise, he could be a wanderer due to his inclination to see and be involved in so many of the affairs of the world. As was typical in life readings for young children, a follow-up reading after the 12th year was recommended for adjustments in the development of the young man. At that time, other past lives could be identified and processed. But for the first 12 years, the focus was to be on dealing with the Brutus incarnation. Considering Julius Caesar's reform of the Roman calendar, Casey made an interesting remark about the child's birth date, which echoed Caesar's influence: the Julian calendar. The child was born on July 19th, the month of Julius Caesar. Casey concluded the reading by noting that the child would repeat the pattern as Brutus and try to be as Caesar. Hence the necessity for discipline from every angle, but in love and patience. The background information for this case contains a wonderful story about the father of the child purchasing a book about the life of Julius Caesar on the day the child was born and reading it during the birth of his son. The father was not inclined to reading books and could only comment that he felt a strong urge to buy and read the book. Unfortunately, no other information was obtained about the reincarnated Julius Caesar. Attempts were made by some of Casey's associates to identify a person born at Bellefontaine, Ohio on the specified date. Although a name was found in the birth records, efforts to locate the reincarnated Caesar were not successful.